Hey everybody, welcome back. Today I want to take a trip back 3 decades, back to 1995, to explore one of the best 2D platformers of all time, at least in my opinion, Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy's Kong Quest. And yes, for those who are familiar with my channel, I did make one Donkey Kong Country trilogy video, but in my opinion, when I make videos about multiple games together, the quality suffers, and I really do wish to cover every single Donkey Kong Country games separately over time and give them each their deserved spotlight. So, back to 1995, an era long ago, an era full of elite 2D platformers like Mario World, Sonic 2, Yoshi's Island, Castlevania 4, Mega Man X, and so many others. Then suddenly, Rare managed to unleash a game that would compete with the best of the best, and that's why today we analyze Donkey Kong Country 2 to find out just why Diddy and Dixie were able to take over the mantle of the King of Swing and toss another barrel into the Sonic vs. Mario battle for the best 16-bit platformer of all time. Let's go. Well, wait, hold on a second. First, we gotta go back to 1994. Not that 1994, but rest in peace, Kurt. We do still love you. Ah, yes, those sweet sea shanties from 94 that we all knew and loved. Simpler times. Simpler times. Anyway, speaking of simpler, Donkey Kong Country, the original one, number 1, absolutely blew up and revived an ailing at Super Nintendo. But despite its success, I do think many people over time have found the original Donkey Kong Country to be pretty simplistic for a platformer. I mean, yeah, it did have amazing cutting-edge computer-animated graphics, and it did have a really new badass design for Donkey Kong, but it was a very straightforward platformer, despite the myriad of secrets in each level. But I mean, there were not really any collectibles, it wasn't really easy to track the secrets you had, so it was kind of hard to figure out when you got to that 100% completion rate, and finally, the bosses were just like way too short and easy. So hey, guys, listen, I adore the original Donkey Kong Country, and I'm going to give that game so much credit in a different video. But I do think that there are some valid criticisms about this game that Rare decided to iron out in the sequel, Donkey Kong Country 2. So back to that game in 1995. Wait, what? You took away DK? Is this a DK game? Are you kidding me? Oh, Diddy Kong DK? Okay, I guess that's what they're going for here. This is like watching the NBA Finals in the 90s and not seeing Michael Jordan. Oh, wait a second. That did actually happen in 1993 and 1994, didn't it? So we have Diddy Kong and Dixie Kong, and I would argue this is probably the best Kong duo imaginable to lead a DK game. And I say that loving DK himself, I do wish he came back in 3. But let's start with Dixie, because she was actually introduced in this game and brand new. And her biggest feature was obviously that she could use her banana-like looking hair to fly horizontally. And I mean, this is a huge aid, and this is where I have to give Rare so much credit. I mean, so many kudos points, because honestly, a flying character could utterly break a platformer like this. However, Rare, being the master crafters of platformers that they are, got around this with near-perfect level design and really balancing out both characters. I mean, yes, Dixie can fly, and she can also hold a barrel above her head, which does help with hitting some aerial foes, but here's the thing, Diddy Kong is no chump in this game. He's faster than Dixie, he jumps a little bit higher, he climbs ropes faster, and he can hold barrels horizontally, making his throw quite a bit easier to aim for a lot of the enemies in the game. I mean, seriously, near perfect balance with 2 amazing Kongs. And this is unlike most games where, you know, one player's reluctantly playing as that lesser character. Ugh, Kitty Kong. But no, in DK2, whenever I'd play this game multiplayer, which I did a lot as a kid, I never minded controlling Diddy or Dixie. And I actually ended up using Diddy more because I was the one who owned this game in most cases, and I had friends that were playing it with me, and they were always just fine using Dixie, obviously, because she's great. However, let's return to that level design real quick, because this is really where Rare goes from like great in the first game to god tier in the second game. So on top of tagging in the other Kong to switch Kongs, which was a feature in the first game by pressing select, now you can actually pick up and toss the second Kong to reach areas that you would be otherwise unable to reach. This leads to extra bananas, coins, secret stages, and even an occasional Donkey Kong coin. We'll return to those guys soon. And furthermore, some of the levels, and I think this is mostly in kind of those special stages within the levels, have barrels specifically for one Kong or the other. Again, this could potentially break a game and force players to suicide death if they didn't have the Kong required to enter the barrel. But instead, Rare masterfully crafts extra rewards by being able to access both barrels and having both Kongs alive to reap all the rewards. Just incredible stuff. And here's the thing, there's actually more characters. We gotta talk about the animal buddies just a little bit, because they're so iconic to the series, and they're actually pretty much perfected in the second game as well. I mean, yeah, you got Squawks and Engard and Rambi returning from the first game, but you also have like Rattly the Snake, Squitter the Spider, Glimmer the Lampfish, and a couple other ones. I mean, if it were just a cast, it would be completely subjective between any Donkey Kong Country game. However, I do think that the animal buddies are better in the second game for a couple other reasons. The biggest being that you can actually use them to explore levels more than you could in the first game. You can use them to discover a lot of secret coins, sometimes the DK coin, and sometimes they even have their own bonus stage barrels that you need the animal buddy to be able to use. This not only makes the gameplay more diverse, but it actually increases the challenge, since you can no longer just match those animal icons and get a bunch of extra lives like you could in the first game, or go through kind of set pieces with a character like Rambi, where you knew kind of what he was supposed to do in the level. In DK2, you actually need to explore with the animal buddy just like you do your normal Kongs, and that just increases the kind of immersion and difficulty in the game. But let's move on to one of the biggest features in Donkey Kong Country as a whole, which is just the staggering amount of secrets and kind of secret areas per stage. And look, I mean, even me as a Donkey Kong Country stan, I never played Donkey Kong Country 1 to this day with the intent of finding all the secrets. I mean, I found what I could, but I never felt like it was worth chasing that 100%, especially since it was really hard to track where the stuff was. And, you know, it just like isn't that rewarding to get like a barrel of bananas in a game that's kind of hard, but, you know, one that I've played enough where I can get through it without needing to get every extra banana and bunch of bananas and balloon I can possibly find. If you look at the back of the original game box for Donkey Kong Country, because I remember this, a huge selling point of this game was all the secrets in every level. Now, I'm not saying it's false advertisement, but I mean, seriously, how excited are you to find like an extra stage filled with 2 banana bunches? I mean, unless you're on your last life, I'm guessing not very. So here's the thing, going back to Donkey Kong Country 2, now we got bonus coins, which lead to a secret world. We have 1 DK coin per stage that can be found, and the standard gold coins, in my opinion, are not that epic. I'm not going to lie, one of Donkey Kong Country 2's biggest blunders, in my opinion, is adding these coins in just to save your game or be able to fly somewhere. And it's kind of arbitrary when that happens. Sometimes it's free, sometimes it costs 2 coins. In my opinion, not super great, although they are kind of fun for Cranky's bonus game there. However, the bonus stage coins, which are gotten by getting to secret stages within levels and beating those, lead to a secret world with even more levels. These levels are both challenging and fun, and beating this world, in fact, leads to a second fight with King K. Rool, and you need it to get to that prized 102% completion rate. So a lot of fun trying to find those. And the bonus stages are really fun in this game. They're very diverse, and really kind of fit the theme of each level, something I think Retro Studios kind of dropped the ball on, where a lot of the special stages were very similar. So speaking of other collectibles, you also can get a DK coin in each stage to get that 102%. They don't really add anything otherwise, but it is really fun to see the ranking screen with Link, Mario, and Yoshi. Kind of a cool callback to some of the Nintendo series. And Rare also made these very easy to track, thankfully, since you can see the DK coin image next to any level you complete to know that you collected it already. So overall, these secrets really make the game feel beefier. Instead of trying to find random secret rooms like in the first game, there's track of awards, and they're not as overwhelming as something like Donkey Kong Country 64, which, while a great game, went a bit over the top with the secrets. Controls and tempo, baby. Alright, you all know it, the controls are just fine, very responsive, but I did want to talk more about the fluidity of the stages. I think the original Donkey Kong Country was almost musical in terms of the tempo and how you kind of jumped on enemies' heads and swung on vines and jumped in barrels. I mean, it felt like a symphony. But when you get good at the game, like you're composing the symphony with how well you play the game and just how many things you can kind of combo and kind of beat the stages without having to stop, assuming you don't suck. Now, Donkey Kong Country 2 does keep some of that. But I do think that Rare, being pretty intelligent, decided that yes, you can still like chain a bunch of enemies and kind of run through the levels without stopping, but this game's a little harder and they're prepared for you to try to play that style. So I do think there's like a bigger emphasis on kind of being careful how many enemies you try to jump on. especially when there's like enemies on trees and you got to kind of get across a bunch of trees with enemies on them. There's a lot of emphasis on stuff like, tough jumps, avoiding enemies while climbing ropes, and setting out your own tempo. And this is kind of embodied in something like, the first game felt very kind of melodic, almost with the roller cart levels. But in the second game, there's like levels where you got to take out the enemies. And it's kind of hard, you can't just fly through the level going as fast as you can. You got to be a little bit more careful and plan how fast your cart moves so you can actually destroy the 10 enemies on the roller coaster. And there's other levels too, when you're going through the Bramble levels with squawks and you got to very lightly feather those buttons to not hit bees, or running vertically as poison water comes up to chase you. This game likes to play with the tempo a lot more and kind of turn it into a very cacophonous symphony. In short, I would say Donkey Kong Country 2 retains some of the rhythm of the first game, but just cranks up the variety and the difficulty a bit, and this is a big positive in my opinion. The levels feel a bit more organic in the second game, especially with Dixie's flying ability, and I have to give credit to both games because I truly love both, but I do think the freedom of exploration added in the second game propels it to be a slightly better game. And the last reason I want to talk about why this game is so amazing is the aesthetics. And this is usually kind of a boring section, but I think there's a lot to talk about here. All three Donkey Kong Country games visually stand out on the Super Nintendo because of those fancy pre-rendered backgrounds and computer-animated characters, which were a novelty in the mid-90s. This was not something most Super Nintendo games, or Genesis for that matter, or any console really dabbled with before the mid-90s, and Rare was one of the first expeditioners to try this. The characters and the forefront of the stages still look amazing to this day, in my opinion. And I would actually say that these games actually look better than Donkey Kong Country Returns, though admittedly I will say the pre-rendered backgrounds, while charming, had not aged quite as well. The cool thing about the second game is that it has a muddier palette than the first or the third game, which actually feel quite a bit brighter to me, especially the third game. I think this was probably intentional. While this is still a family-friendly platformer, it does feel a little darker and more haunted than its sibling.
Corn syrup. Same stuff they use for pig's blood in Carrie.
Sorry, not quite that dark. No surprise murders in this game. But the stages really fit that muddy vibe. You have bone cart roller coaster levels, haunted woods, poisoned water, and hell, you even go inside a volcano for an entire world. It just gives me the impression that Rare wanted the areas in this game to be beautiful, yes, but also give them a feeling of danger. This is Gremlin territory here. This is no longer Donkey Kong Country Island or DK Island like it is in the first game, and I think that they want you to feel that. Like, you are not in your home anymore. You're in a dangerous place trying to save your friend. So, adding to the beauty in the haunting stages is also the amazing soundtrack, mostly composed by David Weiss. Tracks like Sticker Brush Symphony or Forest Interlude can make you feel comfortably isolated. And I say that because they're so peaceful and relaxing and beautiful, yet they're kind of haunting, and the stages that they're in can be pretty difficult to get through. But Weiss also brings back some of the more funky and percussive sounds of the first game too. There's still a lot of fun to be had and a lot of percussion and wackiness. So all in all, Donkey Kong Country 2 has a vibe that really seals its identity. It's a beautiful, fun, haunting, dangerous adventure with some of the best stages and songs to match their quality in the genre. So here are my final thoughts on Donkey Kong Country 2, Diddy's Kong Quest. 30 years ago, let's face it, that's not exactly yesterday. And there's definitely people out there that say that Rare's Donkey Kong Country trilogy has been superseded by Retro Studios' take on the formula. I love all 5 mainline Donkey Kong Country games, but to me, Donkey Kong Country 2 is still the best. Donkey Kong Country 2 is still as fun to play as it was basically in 1995, and that's thanks to the difficulty being honed in, though those Bramble stages can kind of burn, I'm not gonna lie. A top-notch atmosphere, an insanely high fun factor, it strikes the most perfect balance in the original trilogy between tight stage design, secrets, and the length of the adventure. Is this game the best platformer of all time? That's honestly impossible to say. Something like Mario World and Yoshi's Island are just as good in terms of the quality, and I would argue maybe even Donkey Kong Country 1 or 3. But where Donkey Kong Country 2 really outshines most of the opinion for me personally is just with how balanced it is. Take Donkey Kong Country 1 or Sonic 2 for example. They're a little too quick and straightforward in my opinion, whereas Yoshi's Island on the other hand is a game I love, but the stages can be kind of draggy and lengthy when you're trying to get 100%, as I just have a tendency to try to do with platformers, especially without having Baby Mario get hit. So, Donkey Kong Country 2 has stages that are pretty in line with the first game in terms of length, but the secret stages, the DK coin, all these collectibles just add an extra challenge and reward for fully exploring the levels. Everything came together with DKC2, and it's totally debatable that no 2D platformer has since truly bested it, and I think there's a valid opinion and argument to be made there. Alright guys, that's going to do it for me in this masterpiece. Honestly, this is a game I could gush about for an hour, but I did try to condense this into a bite-sized video that really just synthesized all my thoughts into something you guys could consume and hopefully either replay, play for the first time, or just add to the convo below if it's a game you have anything to say about. So, here's my question to you. Do you think Donkey Kong Country 2 holds up, and do you think it's still the best Donkey Kong Country game or the best 2D platformer? Let me know your thoughts below. And please also let me know if you think I got anything dreadfully wrong in this video. It occasionally happens. Alright guys, please like and subscribe if you enjoy the video, and if you love Donkey Kong Country 2 as much as I do. Oh man, that means there might not be anyone else subscribing. Subscribe if you like the game. Alright guys, that's it. Thanks for watching. Game on.